you're thinking about the average price in New Sudbury being $450 to $500, 8% on top of that, it's like an extra $50,000.
Yeah. A lot of our first-time home buyers are kind of in that, let's say, price range, $500,000-ish. Where would you advise your first-time home buyers in that kind of price range to start looking for a home?
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit here. Let's... The giggles are coming.
I can't hold it in. Okay.
Welcome to the TNT Real Estate Podcast, where we spark conversations that set you up for real estate success. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Tanya, and each week we bring you expert tips on navigating Northern Ontario's real estate market. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, we've got the tools to help you thrive. Welcome back to the TNT Podcast, where we unpack real estate trends with a Northern lens.
Today, we're focusing on Greater Sudbury's April 2025 market update. We're seeing a ton of intense action in the market. We're seeing lots of people are throwing around like COVID-like market again. We're going to unpack it. It's going to be very eye-opening, I feel.
Yeah, we're going to break down what's hot, where there's some opportunities, and how our clients are actually navigating this challenging, very tight, very hot market. So Tyler, break us down some stats. Tell us what happened in April 2025.
Okay, so there's a few major things that we need to kind of keep an eye on as we go through the year. One is home sold, one is average price. So the amount of homes that were sold in the city proper is 187 in April, which is actually fairly close to what it was in 2024. We're not seeing a big change on how many houses are selling. A big change, or I would say a bigger change, would be the average price. It's up over $20,000, and that's on a 12 month, so from last April to this April. Median days on market is a big change, 10 days on market in 2025. So, houses are coming out and selling as quick as they're being listed, basically. So that's down about 10 days from the year prior. Average sale to list ratio. So you put a house on a market for $500,000. What is it going to sell for? Right now we're at 103%. So it's going to go 3% over whatever you're listing at on average. And then the final is how many active listings are on the market right now, which we're sitting at 122. So if we keep going, we basically have less than a month's inventory, which means it's a huge seller's market in the greater city.
Yeah, so getting to the buyer side of things, then how would you describe buyers' energy and their sort of outlook right now? Are they feeling like there's opportunity for them to buy homes? Are they out there looking, or are they being a little bit more cautious? What are you seeing with your clients?
So I would say people have urgency. I would say my buyers especially have some urgency, but that's kind of the expectation that we set. There's lots of people, obviously lots of bidding wars going on, multiple offers, unconditional offers. We're seeing more and more, but there are still opportunities, especially when you're looking at, just as an example, a house in New Sudbury was listed. 6 of them were listed on the same day, very similar style of houses. And when that happens, they're like the same people that are seeing one are going to see all 6 of them, and they're going to go for their favorite one. And just so happened that these listings all had the same offer date. So I said, you know what, they listed on, let's say, a Wednesday. They're going to hold offers until the Tuesday following, just to have enough people go through, have an open house. But that there's going to be one house that shines that everybody wants. There's going to be some that are a little bit less updated that, only a certain amount of people, or somebody that has, that skill set to fix up the house is going to jump at. So I would say there's always going to be opportunities to find deals, even in a hot market. Things are going to get forgotten about. Listings sometimes get stale, and they get stale a lot quicker in this market when everything's moving quick. So, if something's sitting for 3 weeks, the sellers know what the news is. They know what their neighbors are selling and how quick their neighbors are selling. So they're going to start panicking and saying, we see, price reductions very quickly now. So there's opportunities to, go after those ones. But I would say more than not, it's more urgency than caution, I would say. Cautious.
It's an interesting example you use because you use the example where there's actually 6 sellers competing with one another at the same time.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the demand, and from our experiences, the demand on the buyer side is just that much higher that it surpasses even the amount of inventory. So even if there's 6 houses on the market and there's probably 20 or more people, I imagine, looking in that sort of price range. Yeah. And this is kind of that price range of, I imagine, around the sort of that $500,000 mark, right? That's kind of where they're selling, a little higher, a little lower. Yeah. That seems to be where things are the busiest. Yeah. But it's interesting that even when those properties are competing against each other, there's still that much buyer competition that it's still pretty fierce, right? Mm-hmm. I know you had some clients that were looking in that market and they ended up competing quite a bit, right? They were competing on a lot of different offers, but they were successful. You did find them something.
Yeah, we got the forgotten house.
Yeah,
I say that we stole it only because we got an accepted offer. We were the only offer, so we put in conditions. We're doing a home inspection, and we did that home inspection actually yesterday. And the home inspector was like, "What am I doing a home inspection in New Sudbury? It just doesn't exist in this market." So we were very thrilled that we got that.
It's better for the seller to have a buyer who's done their due diligence, that has had an inspection, that has completed their financing condition as well. Because then at the end of the day, when it comes to closing date, that buyer's going to close on the deal. There's not going to be any weird wishy-washy where they change the buyer's name before closing.
That's right.
I've seen that a little bit.
I mean, and we're also seeing like the pre-offer inspections as well come back. I mean, I guess they never really went away, but just not enough. Not a lot of people were using them last year. I guess there wasn't as many multiple offer situations. But yeah, it's definitely coming back. And, the home inspectors that we've been working with for a while are, putting out some good products, changing the game a little bit. So I think it's all good things.
Yeah. So we talk about New Sudbury a lot. We certainly talk about it a lot on this podcast because it's been a hot market since, we started this. So we have our top performing neighborhoods. We have a little bit of breakdown here. New Sudbury, in the month of April, we had 27 sales, 108% sale price to list price ratio. Yeah. And that's 70% of those properties in the market selling for over asking. Yeah. That's probably one of our higher list price to sale price ratio markets.
For sure. And I mean, when you're thinking about the average price in New Sudbury being $450 to $500, 8% on top of that, it's like an extra $50,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah. Minnow Lake also is one of our top ranking neighborhoods, 101% sale price to list price. And we've seen a lot, especially now at the beginning of May, and it certainly started in April, was the Valley. Valley East sales, there were 37 sales last month. Average price, $559,000.
That is a huge price for for Valley.
For the Valley. Yeah. That is a huge jump up, I'm sure, from 2024. And I think just anecdotally, like from our own experiences with our clients, Valley East is super, super busy right now. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of properties go with 10 plus offers on the property. More like 15 to 17, I think, is probably more the average.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like just talking about Valley East for a second, you can tell where population growth is happening when schools are going up and schools are changing.
Right.
And I mean, like they're building a massive school right on the highway down the street. They're closing down a couple of the little ones doing the campus style. But like Valley East is booming right now. And it just, I think it's, until we get a $560,000 average sales price, it was much more affordable. You can get, for that $560,000, you can get, a house with a garage.
Yeah, usually you can get a garage with a house. I think in New Sudbury at that same price point, you're not really getting a garage, or maybe you're getting a little one.
Yeah.
But the lot sizes are typically a lot bigger in the Valley.
Yeah.
And people certainly like to have more space and more privacy.
Yep.
And just the development alone in the Valley has been huge. I think it's going to be a great boom for, families starting out and for downsizers who want to stay in their neighborhood as well. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that.
Do the last one because it's
okay. Shocking. Yeah. The last top performing area is Capril. Yeah. It's affordable and the price is rising.
Yeah.
And that I think is probably mostly due to the larger homes in Capril, not like your smaller little kind of Inco style homes that used to be, or that are certainly a lot more prevalent in Capril, but the larger homes like on Hannah and whatnot, they're selling for higher prices.
Yeah. And I mean, Capril is that next step out. So when somebody, just like, I mean, if you talk about Toronto first, like Toronto, when you get priced out of Toronto, you go to North York. After you're North York, you go to Vaughan. And once you get priced out of Vaughan, you go to Barrie. and then Sudbury eventually.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess Cape Real is that next step from when you get priced out of, the
Hanmer
valley, you go
Valley.
kind of go to Hanmer, then Hanmer to Cape Real, right? It's only an extra 5 minutes really.
Yeah.
And you're getting much more house out there than you are in Hanmer.
Yeah,
right?
it's a nice little community, and it's definitely one of the more affordable ones. But it's usually been a pretty slow mover for sales. So it's interesting to see that it's actually one of our top performers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So what surprised you the most? The number of over asking sales in New Sudbury, or how much Cape Real is heating up?
I mean, the biggest surprise is Cape Real, because it's usually like the forgotten. It's like the younger brother in the family is just like kind of like the forgotten one, but it's like that's basically what it is. I would say that was the most surprising, but I think like as like a volume of sales, New Sudbury being on so hot as it is, I think that's also surprising, just not as much as Cape Real being on the leaderboard, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder if people are moving, like we talk about people moving outside the city core, and you gave the example certainly of the GTA. But I wonder if the valley is kind of becoming that sort of New Sudbury, New Sudbury. If people are priced out of New Sudbury, it's getting a little tight, that they're moving to the valley because they have all the amenities out there.
And I feel like the valley's becoming more, I guess it always was, but I feel like it's becoming like a family friendly neighborhood. Like when you have a young family, that's where you go. Like my wife obviously was a supply teacher, and she like loves going to the schools in the valleys. The kids are well behaved, the schools are nice, they're clean, they're new. So I mean, I think it's, if you have a young family in Sudbury, it's kind of the place to be, maybe.
So a lot of our first time home buyers are kind of in that, let's say, price range 500,000-ish. Some of them can sort of stretch a little higher, maybe 550, 575. Where would you advise your first time home buyers in that kind of price range to start looking for a home?
It really depends on what they need. I am still a staunch advocate for New Sudbury. So if you can get into New Sudbury, you can see the growth from the last 10 years, average sales price of, even let's say 6 years, like pre-COVID. And I know COVID's a little bit of a weird time, but average price of $250,000. Now that's doubled, and I don't see it stopping anywhere. It might become more of like an investment.
That was going to be my point. Is I would say that maybe New Sudbury might be a bit of a deterrent for some people starting out in some families, because it is becoming an investor haven. A lot of single family bungalows are being turned into duplexes. And, with auxiliary buildings potentially being built on those lots as well. I think my clients, and it's interesting too, depends where people are from. Where's their home base and what are they used to? I have this young family who's moved, recently from Whitby, and they are, working for Vale, one of the large miners here. And the opportunities for them, they're just a lot more open to the opportunity, right? Because they didn't grow up with a specific neighborhood in mind, and they're open to anything that's, a reasonable commute to work, has good schools and good opportunities for their kids in a nice lot. And it's been pretty amazing to show them properties. Certainly in the valley, we've seen a lot of good opportunities. It's a little hot, so it's a bit difficult to buy something, but going out to Dowling, we've seen a couple places in Dowling and even in Onaping where they are just blown away. They're blown away at what you can get for, say, between $500,000 and $600,000. Beautiful homes, a lot more country setting, a little less neighbors, maybe some less amenities in the neighborhood too. But if someone wants to be in the country, like it's really fun to see things through their eyes and see how excited they are to see these properties.
Especially when you're working with somebody from out of town that like maybe has been traveled here a couple times, knows the area, but not like they haven't looked through the lens of like where to live in the area. So I totally agree. But just to finish up my point on where I would tell my first time home buyers to move, I would say New Sudbury. If they're looking for being in like the action, the hustle and bustle, you want to be close to stores and restaurants and stuff like that. If you can get into the hospital area, there's a couple smaller places. If they don't need like a big house, you can get into the hospital area. But I kind of agree with you. If they're looking for a house that they're going to live in for 5 to 10 years, want a little bit of space, want a yard, I would say you got to go outskirts. Garson Valley, Chelmsford, Azilda.
But it really depends on the people as well. Like I do think there's a little bit more, like if your clients want to be more centrally located and close to like the hustle and bustle and things happening, we do see people who want to move into the West End. Maybe there's more of an artsy kind of feel there. The West End, uptown, certainly. Hospital area is always great, but there's so few homes that are available for sale, and they generally are higher priced. But there's been a few little ones, like this little house on Whitaker right now for sale. It looks super cute. I think that'd be a good opportunity for first timer. It's small, certainly. Maybe more for a couple rather than for a family that's growing.
That's true. Yeah, very true. Okay, so let's get into, we kind of talked about the areas that are heating up or are hot right now. You want to talk about a little of the softer, like what's kind of softening?
Yeah, so definitely the luxury market. Well, it depends. Some of the luxury market is flying and doing really, really well, right? But I think it's a little bit tricky when you have, let's say, a larger home in that kind of $800,000 plus range, maybe 8 to 9. It's a step up for a family, right? Someone owns a home, maybe they're feeling a little tight. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and they have this one. It maybe has 2 living rooms, a bigger rec room, a bigger yard. We've seen even the most beautiful looking showroom ready properties just sit on the market. We've seen some that, I don't know, for some reason they have the right layout. They fly, they go, they're listed at say $799, they sell for $900 plus. Yeah. And then you see some in that $800 range that are just kind of like sitting there for a little bit. And I think the reason is that buyers in that price range are very discerning. So if you have a home, maybe it's worth $500,000, $600,000, and you want to make that move up, you've cared for your home a long time, you've put on a new roof. Then when you go look at some of these homes, you're like, I have to, do that again. I'm just not sure I want to do that again. Yeah. So I think those homes in that higher price range have to be just move-in ready, well kept. Even if they look beautiful, from the photos, nicely staged, we can do that, certainly do some beautiful staging. But when you start, buyers are a little more discerning, and they're going to start looking at all the details, all the upkeep. And for a larger home, it's going to be more expensive to upkeep, and your taxes are high too. So you're going to make the decision to go from $5,000 of taxes to almost $10,000 in taxes annually. You're going to want it to be the right house. So we're seeing that sort of upper market, just a little bit slower days on market, certainly still moving. And then of course, waterfront's always super hot, but I definitely think that sort of 800-ish plus is a little slower right now.
And I think we need to make a distinction between like in-town luxury and maybe a little bit more rural luxury. Like the houses that are out sitting on, 10 to, or even 5 to 10 to 20 acres. Those ones are moving pretty quickly because people want their own space. They want their privacy. The waterfront places are moving fairly quickly, but it's like the in-town, you're in a subdivision at $1 million. Those are obviously a little bit slower. And I feel like when you're showing houses like that, it's always like, well, if we're going to spend, I always hear that, well, if we're going to spend this amount of money, I would like this to be finished, or I would like this to be on the house or around. So I think that's a huge thing that you kind of always hear when you're showing luxury listings in Sudbury is like, if I'm spending this, I want
an ensuite, a walk-in closet.
That's right. The ensuite is huge.
A garage, a yard for whatever, a pool, that type of thing. Yeah. There's always those boxes, and that discerning buyer, they're just not going to move if they can't make that home work or it's perfect.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about advice about, buyers and sellers and what they're doing in the market. So when you're writing an offer with a buyer, what are you advising them to do in this market?
So when they're competing, especially, one of the things I like to do is I play this little game, and it's a game that, I play with myself as well. Okay, so you want to bid $550. So if someone offers $555 and the house sells for $555, are you going to kick yourself? I always have to ask them that. Are you going to kick yourself? Are you going to regret it? Or would you say $555, you would have bid $555? And if their answer is yes, then we go up the next tier. Okay, so if it goes for $560, are you going to kick yourself? And usually there's a point where a buyer will say, you know what? That's it. That's my max. I wouldn't even care. They can have it at $575. Yeah. Doesn't even matter. So it's hard to sort of do that sometimes because a buyer will have a certain number in their head when they go see the property. They feel like, okay, this is what it's worth. But then if they do lose out, and they lose out by a tiny fraction, sometimes it's $1,000 or so. Usually it's more to do with conditions. Honestly, it's not always about the money. Yeah. But when you're often we'll see buyers who are very, very close in numbers. And so sometimes it's just about tweaking it a little bit, maybe offering an open closing date, something like that. But usually I just want to get to sort of like, what's that peak number where a buyer feels comfortable and where do they not feel comfortable? And then let's just like draw a line.
It's the worst when you have to call your buyers and tell them that they lost by, $2,000 or whatever it is. On my listing recently, I had to do that to buyer's agents and say, listen, like it was super close, but like it was extremely close. Anyways, but it's nice on the other end, and I'm not saying it's nice, but we had offers on a place in New Sudbury, and my buyers, like it was listed at $500,000. My buyers went $80,000 over asking,
wow.
and we were unconditional offer, like I thought we were definitely in the running, and we lost by an extra $60,000. So this house sold $140,000 over asking. We were somewhere in the middle,
wow.
But that's a much easier call to your clients to say, listen, we lost, we got destroyed in this bidding war. Somebody just wanted it way too much. And like, I find it's a way easier conversation than being like, we lost by $2,000. We did all the right things, but we lost by $2,000 or even $5,000 is a tough call, right?
Because what is it in the long run for a mortgage? If you're going to be in the property for 5 or 10 years, it's definitely, a conceivable amount, sort of like a $2,000 to $5,000 difference. It's not huge, but when it's easy when it's $40,000. Just, okay, they can have it for $400,000 more.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the controversy right now is over pricing. We're seeing properties priced at, we're calling it the magic 399 number, $399,900. All the while knowing as an agent and with your buyers that the market value is maybe $70,000 or more.
Yeah.
Then that sort of price range where it's listed at. What are your thoughts on under listing by 70, 80 grand?
I am undecided on it, I would say. And it's tough for us as agents to do because, I mean, there's examples of, a house being listed where it should be, like, let's say $460,000, and that's fair market value. That's what somebody actually should pay for it. It goes on the market. There's no offers for a week. That the price gets dropped to $399. All of a sudden, there's all sorts of these buyers, a multiple offer situation, and it sells for like $460 or $460, $470, somewhere in the range of where it actually should be worth. So in those, it happens often enough in those scenarios, it's like, okay, obviously it does work. If you list where it should be, yes, it might take a little bit longer to sell, but somebody's going to hopefully buy it around, fair market value. But then you get into these bidding wars and you go, $50,000 under ask, get a ton of action. It disrupts the families living in the house. And, half of the people looking at the house aren't approved to fair market value, right?
Yeah.
So, but it does get, the people that are approved, it does like, oh my God, there was 50 showings on this house. We have to go a certain amount over asking. And sometimes they do get a ridiculous price for it.
Yeah, I understand that point. But I also think that if you're underpricing a property significantly and you're driving up the activity in that property, so number of showings, number of offers, there's an unrealistic expectation that, that is started in that sense. So you have buyers going through and they say, okay, I've got a budget of $425. I'm going to go see this. It's $400. Awesome. I can bid on it. Right. But it's not realistic. Those people, half the people going through the property can't afford it. Half of the people making an offer on the property are probably not even in the running. Mm-hmm. So to be able to say, oh yeah, we got 17 offers I sold for X over list price. Oh, this is so amazing. I don't think it's worth bragging about. Personally, I think it's not worth bragging about because when you're on that receiving end of the offers, how many people didn't even have a chance.
Yeah.
Probably half or more.
Yeah.
So I think it's unfair to those buyers. I think it sets unrealistic expectations in the market that someone can actually get a home for $400,000 that looks like this. And I think we are starting to see agents creep up in pricing a little bit. Like if it is sort of maybe between $450, $475, they're listing around that sort of $450, $475 mark, and people are going to see it. So maybe you get 10 showings and not 50, and you get 5 offers and not 17.
Yeah.
But those offers should all be within the property's range. So I don't know. I think it takes us as agents to elevate the bar of our profession and not sort of stoop to the lowest price just to say we did, bragging rights. I got 20 offers, yeah. Right? What about those 10, 15 people who weren't even in the running? I just think it's awful for them. And I think we should, anyway, I'm a little passionate about this. I think we should increase the prices and be closer to the list price.
Yeah.
And then we as agents, we work with buyers too, right? We work with buyers and we work with sellers. So it's our job as agents to educate those buyers and say, okay, this is where we're going to keep shopping. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see this is priced at 400. I know it's going to be 450 plus.
Yeah. Just to build on your point a little bit too, I think when you're talking to your buyer clients and saying, this is like we're approved up to $450,000, this is going to sell for more. There's always like we should go see it anyways. We should see it anyways because what happens if it doesn't sell for 450? What if we could snag it at 440? I'm like, no, it's it's going to sell for probably 500 or 525. So it puts an unreal, and then that kind of just builds. They talk to their friends and say, listen,
right?
Yeah, and I mean they talk to their friends and they say, listen, we have to go $100,000 over asking, and that builds the mentality that we had, in the last 4 or 5 years in Sudbury, saying that which is kind of why the underpricing strategy works because people have that expectation. We have to go $50,000 to $100,000 over asking, which is if we just priced it semi correctly, mm-hmm. They would be, maybe we have to go a couple $1,000s over asking or up to, $25,000, but we're in the running. Mm-hmm. We're definitely close to where it should be.
Yeah.
Right?
We were even, we competed on a property that was underpriced. There were 3 offers. We all offered all within the same range, maybe 10 to 15 over the list price. Yeah. And the seller said, no, we actually want 50 more. So we'll take it off the market. Yeah. And then they relisted at the higher price. So that's, again, setting an unrealistic expectation. And when 3 or 4 people come forward and have a certain number in mind.
Yeah. If they're all around the same price, that sets your market. That's what the house is worth. Yeah. Especially in this market, if somebody's going to buy it for a ridiculous price, it's gonna sell for a ridiculous price in this market. If they get a couple of offers and they're all hovering around the same price,
that's probably
your market. You should sell it at that price. Yeah. So there's unrealistic buyers, unrealistic sellers, but at the end of the day, we work with everybody to do the best that we can.
Yeah, do our jobs.
Absolutely. Okay, so overall, we see that obviously the Sudbury market has been on fire in April. The couple first days of May has, showing the same. Maybe it's even getting hotter. My advice to everybody out there is, get your ducks in a row for buyers, sellers. Contact a professional realtor that can market your house in the best way possible.
Yeah, your local realtor will have the hyper-local numbers for your area and be able to advise you the best on selling strategies. And for buyers as well, it's great to have a local buyer's agent hitting the ground with you, seeing the properties and making the offers and negotiating for you. So yeah, it's busy out there in the market, but your realtor is there to help you.
Good luck out there.
Thanks for tuning in to the TNT Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to leave us a comment, subscribe, and share with a friend who might be interested in real estate.
We'll catch you next time, and until then, stay ahead in real estate.